Thank you everyone for joining us on this ELSAConnect session. I have the pleasure of introducing you to the amazingly accomplished and multifaceted Priya Ramasubban. Priya did her Eco Honors from LSR, batch of 1993, but she very quickly realized that Eco did not really interest her very much. Being an avid storyteller, she decided that she might as well try her hand at media. She went on to Sophia College to do her master's in social communication and media, and then thereafter another master's in the US. By that time, she had realized that filmmaking was definitely her calling because it allowed her to continue to do her storytelling. Over the last 2 decades, she's produced, directed, written for major media channels, including the History Channel, Discovery, National Geographic. In fact, in 2018, she produced her first movie in collaboration with her sister. It's a beautiful movie called Chuskit, which is about a young paraplegic girl, a Ladakhi girl, who's unable to go to school, and her dream is to go and study in school and unable to do that. It's been shown in various international film festivals, has won awards. We hope, I've seen a little trailer of it. It really looks like a beautiful movie, and we are hoping that once COVID is over and things are back to normal, we do get to see it in the theaters. Now you would think that this would have filled up Priya's time completely, but that's not all. This is just one part of her persona. And in fact, while she's been doing all of this, she's been traveling a lot. So she's traveled across 29 countries. From A to Z, that's Argentina to Zimbabwe, doing all her media work. But as I said, this is not all. There's lots more to her, but I'll say it in very quickly because of paucity of time. Her non-filmmaking avatar, she's a citizen activist working on rejuvenation of lakes in Bangalore. She's worked on solid waste management issues in her neighborhood. She's on the panel of sexual harassment at workplace for 2 corporates. And last but not the least, has raised money for causes she supports by taking classes in international cuisine. So I think ELSA Table should watch out and look out and see how we can get recipes from her. Priya was very clear that, I mean, both Neelu and I tried to talk to her about all these multifaceted, achievements that she's had. But she was very clear she didn't want to talk about any of that. She wants to talk about something which is very, very close to her heart, an issue that's very close to her heart, of how we're all privileged, the privileged lot, and we should learn to recognize and be aware of the powers and privileges that we have and how we can utilize them in our daily lives. So Priya, I request you to come in at this stage and talk to us about this issue. And I know you planned a quick interactive game to start with.
Okay. Thank you. That was too much of a glorious description.
I have to say that she's the most humble person I've ever met. The only times I had to have a problem with her in our 2 or 3 discussions was, please don't write about me in glowing terms. But I said, I won't write about you, but at least talk about you in glowing terms.
Yes. So yes, and that's one of the things that I keep saying. We all are, we think we've achieved a lot on our own, and we really haven't. A lot of what we achieved has come from the interdependence and interconnectivity that has led us to where we are, and which is why this talk was important to me, for us not to perceive ourselves as independently having gotten to places, and that it ties in with this thing of privilege that I want to talk about. But if all of you can just, I'm going to ask about 11 questions, and you could just use your hands and you can count if. So normally when I do these, it's called stakeholder privilege walks. So I ask questions, and if it is true of you, normally, everybody starts at a starting line and everybody takes 1 step forward, and you're blindfolded normally. And so at the end of it, you remove your blindfold and you see where you are in comparison to all the other people that you started on the same line with. And that shows you some of the things that you have experienced in your life, which others haven't. And that starts a dialogue on developing empathy, understanding other people's perspectives and things like that. And it can be for anything, but this is about privilege. So since we can't all be walking around, so maybe you can use your fingers. Instead of taking a step, you count on one of your fingers. Yeah. So first question, if you went to a private school, take a step forward or count on your finger. If your parents paid for your education without you having to skip a meal or have any hardship, one more finger for that. Your parents have degrees, one more finger for that. You went on vacations during your school holidays, not just to your nana, nani, dada, dadi's place, but had the options of going other places as well. Your family could afford a comfortable home. Take another step forward. Your parents could afford domestic help. One more step forward. You got or expect someday to get some sort of property or assets from your parents. It doesn't have to be anything big, but just anything. Gold jewelry, car, whatever. If I ask you whether you are wealthy or not, you will ask me to define the parameters for wealth. If that's the case, take a step forward. You went to an exclusive college. I know we can all take a step forward. Your parents helped you buy something major, your first vehicle, your first home, your first computer, something like that. Your first proper job wasn't after college. Take a step forward. You or your family have access to someone in structural power, which means either politicians, CEOs, doctors in hospitals, heads of any institution. Yes, if you have access to somebody in structural power, take a step forward. Now, is there a way for us to see how many people have how many numbers? Ruchi, can you start? Like, if you want to share, how many? Oh, you're on mute.
So all of them were a yes, which
all of them were a yes.
Yeah.
I suspect for almost all of us.
I had nine. I had 9.
9 out of 11. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody? Yes. Sorry. Go ahead, Kaveri. Sandhya?
8. Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty high up. 10. Yeah. So pretty high up. So I'll ask you one other question. Do you know anyone who could not have taken a step forward? Just take a moment to think about that.
Yeah, many people.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of our sort of privilege comes from this, that we have taken for granted, that we had an education, that we had access to things, right? Whereas if we even look at maybe somebody who works as a maid in our house, will probably not have even one of these, right? And at best, they may have a few, right? And their access to structural power is us. Yeah. So what that actually does, what I find when we start looking at our lives like this, we start to see, for instance, when I do these exercises with people when they're working, when they have domestic laborers or migrant workers who are working in their garden or in their construction site, and when people don't show up on time, when your maid takes 3 days off all of a sudden and all of that, everybody's like, oh my God, I can't go to work. This lady, she's like getting on my nerves. It's all of those things that it's natural for us to feel that way because our lives are structured around this sort of support that we get, right? But if we were to see, these people haven't had any of the privileges that we had to begin with. And so therefore, a lot of their struggles are not identifiable at all for us. If you look at what they do in order to show up at your place at 8 in the morning, where they have to take care of their children, the safety that a lot of us take for granted is something that, you know, they don't even have. They don't have access to the basic things like water and things like that. So, and that's just for domestic workers I'm talking about, but there's so many other places. When you go to, if you were a man, for instance, if you could just identify as a man, and if I were to ask a different set of questions, or if we as women, I start asking the same questions that I would ask for men, they would get 11 out of 11, and almost all of us would not get any, which would be if I asked questions like, when you go out in the night at about after 10 o'clock, do you actually think about whether you should leave the house or not? I can tell you almost all of us will say yes. Okay, we have to think whether we have to leave. But the men will say, no, don't have to, right? When we walk out wearing certain clothes, do we have to actually think about what we're wearing when we answer the door? So things like that. So privilege is not a sort of all-encompassing, now that I'm privileged in this, I'm a privileged person. No, in this aspect, I'm privileged. In this aspect, I am not, right? So it's, once we start exploring these, we start to see that privilege is actually power. And why it's power is because you don't have to think about, when you don't have to think about certain things for your ordinary life to go on, that is privilege. And that is the power that we have. Now, when we talk about that privilege, most often we don't like to recognize it because it starts to make it seem like it's bad. Oh my God, I'm so privileged, I'm so spoiled, and all of that. I don't think we need to go that far. So for me, just having to introspect about this is how I've been able to change my own reality and the reality of how other people perceive me and how I interact with people. Ruchi, should I just go on and talk about how I came here, or do you have any questions about?
So I was just thinking, you know, your whole point is we should be aware of our privileges and our powers, right? So as a whole lot, as all of us sitting here, and I know you had a very beautiful phrase for it, this attitude of gratitude, right? Of saying we all should be grateful for the privileges and powers that we have. So how do we inculcate and develop this attitude? How do we go about doing this? I mean, that would be a nice way of going into the next section.
Okay, so like I said, the first thing, anything that comes naturally to us that we don't have to think about, and if other people can't have it, then that's privilege, right? So I do this exercise in general, at least once a year. I do it for myself, and I decide the day before that I said, okay, tomorrow I'm going to do my own privilege walk. So when I wake up, I say, okay, I've woken up, I'm looking at a roof, I have a roof over my head, I still have a roof over my head, great. Many people don't, okay. And then I get off the bed and I start walking. Oh, I have 2 feet, and my mother is now, you know, disabled. She has ALS, and for the last 4 years she hasn't been able to walk. She then couldn't talk, and then now she can't really eat much. So it's a debilitating condition, and so I'm very close to that, right? And to be able to recognize what we take for granted, that I can just put my feet down and walk, which my mom can't do anymore, right? That starts to get you to think how close it is and how easy it is for us to lose these privileges. And so when I can get down from my bed and walk, I walk into the bathroom, I can open my tap and water comes out. And I don't have to think about, I have like, you know, toothbrush and this and that and whatever I want. I go down, I look in my kitchen, I have this thing, I have to have chai, I can have it. I have the privacy, I have so many things. So just for me to play this once a year in my head, because so many times we get bogged down by what we don't have, right? Oh, my children are not studying well. Oh my God, this is not happening. My business is not going well. COVID is like, killing my business, or I'm feeling so frustrated about all of this. Well, if we start looking at what we have, it's a beautiful reflection on and a meditation on what is good about us and about our lives. And that's what I call attitude for gratitude, because then you can start feeling gratitude for what you have. There will be things that we won't have, right? But if we keep focusing on that, the whole way in which we deal with the world and the way we deal with other people who have far less than us gets very affected. So once we have that attitude, then every time I go now on the road, I mean, I made a film because my sister has worked with, with people with disabilities ever since she went to TIS after LSR. And she always worked with people with disabilities. So she was very aware and she sort of brought it to us, right? But now that it's so close to home, because my mom can't go out, she's on a wheelchair. And now her hands don't move much, that, even the toggle on her electric wheelchair, very hard for her to move. And they live just literally 300 meters from my house, but she can't come here because the roads are not accessible. So think about all the people with disabilities. When we talk about speaking about equal rights and all of that, we always couch it in the terms that are sort of sold to us, which are not bad sells at all. Women's rights, rights of, the rich versus poor in terms of money and access to aspirational things and all of that. But even the basic things of dignity that all of us would like in our lives, many people don't have access to, right? And so therefore, for me, developing that attitude, saying, oh, I'm so grateful to this universe, or whatever, your God, your whatever it is, your parents, your children, for giving you a peaceful, wonderful life, your husband for being a great partner, whatever it is. So, to have that attitude of gratitude completely changes things. And then you start seeing other people's frustrations as so much more real, because you're saying, oh, I can do that. That's very easy for me. This person probably really can't, and they're not able to. And of course, I can see why they're frustrated, because then it completely changes the dialogue you have with people. Yeah. So that's what I talk about when I say attitude for gratitude. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Just given you've been thinking about it, and you're so aware about your privileges and powers. I know you've worn many hats. You've been a filmmaker, you've been a social worker, you've been an activist. Give us a few examples of how you've used this awareness in your work, and how have you made an impact on people's lives, just because of you being aware of what you have and what they don't have. How have you used it in your work?
So I'll start with how I sort of became aware of this in my own life. I say it funnily, nobody needs to think too deeply about it. My parents had 2 children before my mother got pregnant with me, and they wanted a boy. So I keep telling everybody that I am, in the US, there is a term that they use, get with the program, which means, whatever if you're in a film business and if you're not doing it, hey, come on, get with the program, right? You like join what is meant, why you're here. What is the reason for you to be here? Get with that program, right? So I say, I never have been with the program. So my mother wanted a boy, and there I was, right? A girl. Don't feel bad for me. I am deeply loved by my parents, and so then by 2.5, I was such a handful that they sent me to school. They were like, okay, listen, this girl really needs something to do because she's super hyper. So I went to school, right? So then I went to, and there, of course, I didn't get with the program because I was much younger than everybody else, LKG, UKG, first standard. And then they moved me to another school where both my elder sisters were there, in Vidyodaya in Chennai. And there was a tamarind grove and a mango grove. And so what the program is when you get sent to school is to study. I didn't get with the program there either. So I pretty much, the first class was when they used to take attendance, and there were 60 students in the class. So I would sit for the first class. I would say, yes, ma'am, yes, miss, present, miss. And then when the bell rang, I'd say I have to go to the loo. And I would go and I'd be in the tamarind grove or in the mango grove all day. I never attended class till I was in 4th standard. Then 5th standard, they moved me to Bain School in Chennai. And there again, I didn't get with the program because education, like going to study and all, was like too much hard work. I didn't want to do it at all. So and then they moved to Delhi. My father was working with the Birlas. They put me in this Birla school. And there again, sports. By then I was in Bain School. I was, one of my teachers saw that I was good at sports. So they recruited me to be in the inter-school competition, and I went and represented my school. And then I became Madras champion for girls under 10, athletics. So then I started representing. I went to Kanchipuram for a, state meet and things like that at the age of 10. But these are not tested by school. School is for certain kinds of tests. So I was kind of an outlier always. When I came to Delhi, I represented Delhi in the national games till I was 12th standard, and I didn't care about studying at all. And I got some 60s. It's either 63 or 67%. I got 63% in 10th, then I got 67 in 12th, or the other way around. So no way I could have gotten into LSR. But, and all my Delhi state team wanted to, had permanent admission in Kamala Nehru College, because Kamala Nehru College will take any national level athlete to be there. And I said, I'm going to Kamala Nehru College. And my sister, who went to LSR, she said, are you completely out of your mind? You're not going to Kamala Nehru, you're going to LSR. I said, what will I do? No, they don't have a sports thing. And she said, no, you're going to LSR. So then they said, okay, what subject do you want? And I said, economics honors, because I liked economics in 12th standard, kind of, sort of. I got maybe 72 in that, more than other subjects. So I did eco, and I had no aptitude for it at all. But I represented still, I was in the nationals and all of that. So what that did, even though I was an outlier, I was around people who were brilliant. Everybody of all of you, have gotten there on the educational, merit, have a certain gravitas, which I didn't have. But I have no inferiority complex. That's kind of a problem with me, So I was always an outlier. And so I was able to see things from the outlying areas, right? I was able to see it from the periphery. And as I noticed things, one of the things I noticed every day when I would go to school in Delhi, there was a lady at 6:30 or something, my school bus used to come. And there was a lady in a park who would come every day dressed with a bag. She would be walking into the park. When I came back from school, she'd be sleeping in the park. When I went to train at Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium, for my athletics, I did every day. I trained for 3 hours. And when I went, she would start to dress herself. When I came back at about 7:30 from my practice, she would be fully dressed and heading out. After a little while, I understood that she was a prostitute, right? And I started noticing all of these things. And I thought, what must her life be like? What kind, where are her parents? She was like 20, in her 20s. And I had not seen anything like that, So I started noticing things that were on the periphery. And then I said, I want to represent what is on the periphery to those who are not on the periphery, because it's not easy. If you're towering over everybody, you only see little heads bobbing under you, not in a demeaning way. It's not that you've done this to look down on people, but you're at a different place, right? And I remember MG one day in assembly said something that completely was exactly what I felt. It was a story. I can't remember the exact details, but a girl is walking on a beach, and there are lots of fish that have come onto the beach. They've been washed into the beach, and they're all flipping and all of that, and there are hundreds of them. And so there are other people who are just standing and saying, oh my God, poor things and all of that. What is this global climate change? What's going on? Why is it happening? What happened? And they're trying to do this thing. This little girl picks up a fish and she throws it. And the people who are standing there say, no, that's not going to make any difference. Look at the hundreds and thousands of fish. And the girl turns around and says, it's going to make a difference to this fish. And so she starts throwing as many as she can. And so it struck me, I still get goosebumps when I say the story. To me, it's like, if I can make a difference to that one fish, I want to make it so that when I'm 80 years old, sitting in my rocking chair, knitting, which I doubt I will ever do, knitting, but when I'm sitting there, I must think, okay, was my life worthwhile beyond myself, my immediate family, my extended family, and my friends? Have I done anything out of that comfort zone to actually make a difference somewhere? And that's what kind of propels me to do these things. And also I'm a big fighter cock. So I love to be the counterpoint, because I was the counterpoint in school. I was the counterpoint everywhere. And I like to say, okay, I didn't study well. I did sports, yes. And I dress like this. I don't wear makeup. I'm fine with it, so that people can think, oh, what an arrogant person. She thinks she's so great. Or it's like, okay, this is the counterpoint. I just want you to hear it. It's up to you to take it or leave it, however you take it, right? So, so in my work, for instance, so on my set, the first thing when I get on the set, I get everybody together and I say, okay, listen, this is my worldview. I am the boss here. Unfortunately, there is a hierarchy, right? I am the boss, and I'm telling you, this is how I see the world. In most places, in most corporates, when you go to work, and if you're a woman, and if something happens to you, or anywhere in the world, they tend not to believe you. They tend to ask you to prove that this happened to you. But I am going to be counter to that. If a woman comes to me and said you harassed her in some way, I'm going to believe her. So be on guard. To all the men, right? Be on guard. I won't be unfair. I won't just throw you out, but I will lean towards believing her. And then you can sway me the other way if there is truth to it. So be on guard, right? So I feel like that my privilege as a boss, as a woman, I take charge of it and I tell people, this is how, I will perceive the world, and this is how I'm going to do my jagir. And it's all hierarchical. Everything, privilege is hierarchical. But I own it at that time, and I try to own it in such a way that it balances things out a little differently, right? So in my lake work, for instance, when I started with the lakes, it was sort of like everybody, like Alsur Lake and all of that, was like, oh, walkers and what's the one in Malleshwaram? Sankey Tank, right? It was all like, oh, there's walking and jogging and everything. And I said, no, all of us already have access to outdoors. We can take our car, we can go somewhere. We have, gardens in our house, we have balconies, we have apartments, we have, layouts and everything where you can walk. No, lakes should be commons. And so therefore, I went out, I reached out to the people in villages and everything with the help of a lot of people who knew a lot more than me, right? And I sort of started talking to them and I said, look, what would the vision of a lake in the neighborhood be for you? And when I said to that, I asked people who lived in the villages before around the lake, migrant laborers, people who, didn't have access to so many things that we already do, right? So I asked all of them, and it wasn't just me, it was a whole team, but I was very keen on bringing that perspective, because then we break this privilege. We give other people, because our privilege comes very easily, and because we have privilege, we break down a lot of the other people's privileges. So I wanted to break that barrier. So that's how I try to use my privilege. There are other ways to do it where you just say, I don't want to be privileged at all, and you give up everything. I'm not that saintly, right? So, and that's actually the true activist who say, okay, I'm going to level the playing ground by actually stepping down from my privilege. I'm not there yet. I don't know if I ever will be. But this is how I try to use my privilege to break barriers.
Thanks, Priya. I think that wonderful example of can I just help one fish? I think that was amazing. But I think what we'll do now is, I mean, there are more questions regarding your, the movie that you made and how that reflects how you can hear the voice of somebody who's not privileged. But I think I'll throw the floor open. I think Yumna, you had a question. Why don't you go ahead and ask Priya?
Rishi, thanks. No, I was just saying that's a really important question. How do you own your privilege? And it's a tough question. And I think for everybody, it's it obviously has individual answers coming back, but I don't know. It was just something that resonated with me very strongly, because I think it's so difficult to sort of ask yourself that question, because no one is going to get rid of where they are, right? You work hard to be there. Your parents have worked hard to get there, or at least you assume, and you want to assume that at least part of it is a product of merit and hard work. But then how do you try and bring up people who are clearly who are clearly less privileged, but in a way where you acknowledge that privilege is a part of it, that it's not just that they're disadvantaged, but it is a matter of class as well.
Yes. So I would say I have a little bit of a contrarian point of view, because like I said, I'm always bringing the counterpoint. I don't think privilege is earned most of the times. So, for instance, if you were a man in our society, respect is accrued to you just by having that Y chromosome. Okay. If you were a girl, you have to acquire it, right? So class, education, all of that. I mean, none of us had to do anything. Our parents may or may not have worked hard. Maybe, they had access to rich lands, whatever. It's not always acquired. It's not acquired in a just way. Okay. Accident of birth, so many things, right? But that doesn't mean.
Priya, you're on mute.
Oops, sorry, there was a call. This is where you are now. So I normally say I have a list that I tell people. First, figure out the parts of your identity that you think about least, and that directly correlates with your privilege, right? If you're a male, if you are rich, if you are a female with higher education, and a lot of these things, you figure out what it is. That's the first part of owning this privilege. And the second is to start learning about the people who don't have that privilege, right? So that much I think most of us can do. And then comes this thing where people like me, I look for opportunities to speak and to act. But that can be a very self-righteous way of doing things. I know a lot of people think I'm very self-righteous because I will stand up and I will say, there are people who bring when my kids were young, they would bring their nannies home to play with, when my kids and their kids would play, and they would bring their nannies home. We would sit down, I would give them tea, and I would sit them at the table with a tray and tea and everything. And then they would go home and say, oh my God, my nanny is like, oh, you don't let us sit in the table. So, so those kinds of things happen. And so people can be cross with you about all of this. And when you do advocacy, that could happen. So maybe it's not your personality to be confrontational, but it could be your personality to just reflect and to silently support your maid, your driver, your neighborhood government school that doesn't have access to, I don't know, the internet, whatever. So there could be an advocacy part, which is very time consuming and draining, and people judge you for it. Then there are, other ways in which to do it. So I don't prescribe how you should act on your privilege, but at least to view it and to be aware of it. And then you can decide how you want to do it.
Okay, Priya, I think we have two more questions, and we'll just keep it a bit short.
Sure.
Preeti, would you want to go ahead first?
Sorry, Priya. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi. Really great to hear you. I just wanted to make just say something, and that is that privilege, when taken the way that you're talking about it, it really becomes entitlement. It can become entitlement, yeah? And I think that equally with privilege, there is also the point of respect. That if you can respect somebody who is not privileged, right? but respect them for whatever other qualities they have. I think that is also equally important. Yeah. Okay. So I want to hear what you have to say.
Absolutely. Empathy, looking at other people, qualities in other people that you don't measure yourself by, all of those things are all part of the same thing. Yes.
And one last thing, and that is that there is a danger that when you do this, when the privilege thing comes in, there is either a patronizing or a condescending attitude.
Absolutely.
And that, I think, that's why I mentioned respect. Because respect is between equals.
Absolutely. And it needn't be amongst equals, but you just choose to respect them for, like I was saying that, earlier, if a kid who's gone through 10th standard, studying under a light, it's you respect because that hard work you would never have put in, right? Yeah. So it's not amongst equals, but you elevate them for the reason, something that you can't have. But when you talk about patronization, one quick thing, especially when we're talking about recognizing other people's things, is that not to speak for an underprivileged class. So to stand in support. Often I tell men who go to sexual harassment panels and all of that, they'll say, oh, I will speak for her. I will do this for her. No,
That's
don't know what it's
patriarchy.
like. Yes, you don't know what it's like to be her. If you just stand silently by her when she needs you, you are there. That's good. Don't speak over the people that you intend to help, because that's patronizing.
Wow, that was good. Shubha, you had a question, right?
Hi, that was an amazing talk. Thank you so much. It made me think in ways I have not thought before. Very nice. So and it couldn't have come in a better day, because since morning I've been struggling with a thing, which, so I have a help who comes at 9 and leaves at 6 to take care of my little daughter. And today we had this conversation where, she pointed out that I wear a mask inside the house and you don't. And that's something I've been struggling with, because I cannot imagine being home the whole day with a mask, but I do expect her to wear a mask around the house. I'm still confused on how to respond to that.
Yeah. I like I said, I never speak and tell people anything prescriptive, so I can't tell you how to react, but I would say the first step is to see it from her perspective and see how valid is her thing, and then see it from your perspective and say, okay, I happen to live here. Should I wear this all the time? Right? So, and then you can lay it out and have a conversation with her and work out something, because truly in this time, maybe she lives in a place where there are people at much closer quarters, things like that. You can lay out and see where that lands with her and have a conversation. Often we talk down to people. We tell people, oh, this is what I think. I think more if we have dialogue with everybody, that makes it easier to sort of get everybody on the same page.
Yeah, and so just for context, it's because she's been with us for a very long time, and I had to actually take a step and assure her that I do not step out of the house, because I know that I might be a risk to her. But the thing is the class, because if I was out, when I'm downstairs in my complex, I wear a mask, but I don't. And it's a thing of class. I have to at least acknowledge that I do it because I can do it, because I can afford my class, my privilege allows me to do this.
There you go. So that's reflection already. You're reflecting on, where you've come, why you're in this position. And I think if the more we all start thinking about this, these are hard truths about ourselves, right? And they actually open doors to really beautiful things in the future. So I would encourage you to go with it, be a little uncomfortable. P. Sainath was one of my professors in Sophia, and he would always say, an empty pot and a full pot make no noise, but a half-filled pot is full of noise, and that noise is what actually discomforts you and brings change. So yes, so as we're like filling our pot with like different varied thoughts, it sort of brings forth something much better in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else has a point?
Can I just come in also one more time?
Sure.
So we had Sudhar Kolbe, we've been associated with for a long time, who's a Padma Shri photographer and does a lot of work with conservancy workers and Dalits, and so he's a very powerful storyteller. I mean, he's a journalist basically, but we had him come and talk about his work at the ITC Windsor, I think last year. It feels like 500 years ago, but last year. And then also recently when we did our big poetry festival, we had him and Komu talking about, the same thing. And obviously they're talking then as men, but, of this background, and the stories they tell are so difficult to listen to. The photographs shared are so, they're visceral, right? Pulling out bodies with meat hooks. And it's really interesting because it always disturbs you. And, you have people who are like, oh, that was really powerful, but I wish I hadn't seen it, right? And I think those are the most extreme stories that, are the ones that really force you to look head on at the lives that some people live, that are it's just unbelievable that these are lives that are lived today. And so in some ways, I think that it's also important to look at what really distresses you. It's really important to make yourself, face these truths that are difficult to face. And I think that is one of the really easy in a sense, because it's all out there. It's just a matter of opening yourself to it.
Right.
And at the same
Right.
time, really difficult because it's living with the discomfort.
Right.
So I just wanted to add that other thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Actually, I would, again, in these stakeholder things that I do, I tell people pick one thing, because there are so many things that are wrong around us, right? If you're actually open to the idea of looking at what's wrong around the world, the environment, women's rights, Dalit rights, now the, Muslims are being treated a certain way. We don't like this political party, whatever. But pick one thing that you want to explore some more, and whether it's women's rights, whatever it is, and get to that point of where it's uncomfortable. And then you will know whether you want to do something about it. And even if you don't want to do it, it's okay. You explore it. Not everybody is an activist. Not everybody, when it's a, fight, flight, or freeze, some people freeze. And that's the natural way the world was designed, right? People and humans and animals were designed. So that's all right. But to explore makes us much better. Just one thing, when you said about, uncomfortable things, I tell you, when I was in Sofia, Killari was this place that had an earthquake near Latur. And I decided to go to help. So that night I called our head of the department and I just took a bus along with another friend, Kavita. And we took a bus to Killari. And when we went there were a lot of people helping and everything. And you keep, you have this idea of what villages are about and how, everybody is so innocent, and, this is how you are raised. Either they're innocent or something, or they're really poor. There's so many different perspectives, and you don't have it when you're 20, whatever I was, 21, I think. So we went to this place, and there was a house, a little one-room house that had been cut kind of in half because of the earthquake, and the thing had moved. The foundation wall was here, and the top of it from 5 feet above had moved, and it was about to just crumble. And back there was an old woman, with her, with hardly anything on her head covered, and she was sitting there. And we said, please come out, please come out. And she said, no, my son will come. My son will come to get me. And it was heartbreaking because none of us wanted to go in there and die. And somehow, again, because I was 21, I said, okay, fine. And she was so frail. Went, and there was another man. We went and we carried her out, so scared that the whole thing was going to drop on us, right? We came out, and then there I was trying to figure out in my broken Marathi, where is your son, and all of that. And then she said, oh, in this gully. And the guy from that village said, there is no such gully in this place. He said, no, it's this village. It was not Killari. And we were like, what? You're not from this village? And then she broke down And she said, you know what? He heard about the earthquake. He carried me here this morning. He left me in this building because he doesn't want me, and he's left me and gone. Right? And it completely just broke me. It broke me because, and that's when I started exploring what the hardships of life for women in villages were, when you've become so old and frail, and there's such scarcity of resources and all of that. So those kinds of things start to work on you, and you start to think about your perspectives. And my initial reaction was like, what a shitty son. But then after a while, when I started going to villages more, and I thought, there's hardly anything. If you have a little child and an old lady, what would you do? It's such hard choices so many people have to make. So anyway, being in these places, uncomfortable places, make you question things, and make you question like, oh, I could get on a bus from, doing my master's degree, went there, stayed for 3 days, did a little bit, felt good about myself, came back. Right? So those are all things that putting yourself out there helps you grow and helps people around you grow, hopefully.
Does anybody have any other question? Otherwise, I think we'll wrap up this session. But Priya, I think the amazing insights really of how we need to be aware of our privileges, what we can do with it, but also very, very clearly doing it with respect for the other person, doing it as an equal, not using our privileges in a patronizing manner, right? So you can actually do harm by being patronizing. So really, how can we understand somebody's pain and help him as an equal, right? And we can do this in our everyday lives with people around us. It could be just one fish, right? And it doesn't have to be the entire ocean. Amazing insights, and we definitely will have you back. Just talking about Chuskit, I think I'd love to hear that story and that Ladakhi girl. Also about your lake, and then there's so many other areas. But thank you so much.
Actually, if you all want to come to one of our, we managed. Now I'm no longer part of the trust, but we manage about 200 acres of lakes. So anybody who wants to come to any of our lakes, Kaikondrahalli, Kasvanahalli, Saulkere, all of those, they are some of the best lakes in Bangalore. So please come. And they're all open even
we'll
during
just wait
times.
for this COVID issue to get over, and then the movie and the lakes and all that will follow. But thank you so much for your time, Priya. Really,
I've
really
seen the
useful.
movie. I've seen the movie.
How did you
loved
manage to see it? I was told I just saw the trailer. I didn't see the movie.
I've seen the movie too. It's fabulous.
It's absolutely brilliant.
Oh,
I'm in love with the movie. And
wow.
I can watch it a number of times. And it's so sensitively made. I love the ending.
Beautifully done. They showed it at BIC.
No, we saw it. It was on Tata also. Tata Sky.
Yes, it won the best film at Mami, so it was part of the Mami Film Festival.
Yeah, festival.
And it was shared on our group also.
I had immediately told people while I was watching it that it's on, and that girl, oh my God, she's has done such a brilliant job. Yeah. Even the father, the whole the movie is so sensitive. I absolutely loved it. It's one of the best I've seen. It's too lovely.
Thank you.
So is it available, Priya? Is there a link you can share for the rest of us? We'd love to watch it.
So at the moment, the name of the movie is Chuskit, Chuskit. And at the moment, because it was funded by producers, I can't give access to people unless I have, it's like in film festival circuit, and we're trying to sell it to OTT platforms and everything. So there's contractual obligations that don't allow me to just freely share it at the moment. But I will once I.
What happened to the PVR launch, Priya?
That didn't happen because COVID happened. Yeah.
So, because I think this one should reach out to everyone. It's a movie which is just so beautiful. I think Madhulika also caught it, right? I don't know if anybody else watched it. I watched it, and I can watch it n number of times.
I watched it. It was beautiful.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful.
It's inspired by my sister's work. So next, I will try to rope her in to come and give an ELSA talk.
Especially the lift and all, which was made. It was just so amazing and so natural. The way they got her down, the brothers. It was so cute.
that lift was made by Sonam Wangchuk's group of students.
Oh my
Wow.
God. Okay. Very nice.
Really?
Okay, I think we're Vandana. Do you want to just come in quickly, and maybe we can continue after that, but we'll close the YouTube. But Vandana, do
come in later, Priya.
okay.
Sure.
Vandana, you want to come in and introduce the next speaker?
Yes, thank you so much, Ruchi, and thank you, Priya. That was absolutely amazing. One you had so many facets and dimensions, but it was lovely to share your journey, along with you. Our next speaker, I don't even know what to say, because it's like such a special speaker. She is an ELSA who actually goes down in the history of LSR. She's been a student of LSR. She has been a professor at LSR, and then the principal of LSR for 26 wonderful years. And there are no guesses for guessing who it is. It's MG for us, Dr. Meenakshi Gopinath, who's our next speaker on Saturday. This is the 19th. You don't want to miss this one for sure, I'm telling you. So MG, of course, is a Padma Shri awardee. And, she's been very, very active. She's also the founder director of WISCOM. And she's been active in the areas of gender and conflict resolution and human rights. And she is the first woman who was ever on the National Security Advisory Board. And she's basically worked a lot with gender and human security concerns. And she's on the governing boards of many universities, of institutes, of schools. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I think maybe you should just attend that session, do register, because there's registration for it. And she's going to talk to us, ELSAs, on a space of our own. Now, I leave you to think about the questions you may want to ask about that, and look forward to having you all. I'm not going into so much detail because she is, besides the Padma Shri, has won many, many awards. You can just go Google and see all the, the credentials that go. But for us, she's MG, and it's absolutely our privilege to have her on Saturday. Back to you, Ruchi.
Great. No, so Sandhya, we can end the live YouTube session now.
Yeah.